So thank you, Aaron. Um, so just a little bit about the case study. I can't remember which group. You guys did a little better than my other group, so good for you. Um, the biggest thing that I seen, at least in terms of errors, was number one. Biggest error was some of you are stacking the pestle on top of the SWAT. I don't know if you can even see me. Pestle on top of the SWAT. That's stacking. Intertwine, right, means you blend. And so you need to blend the SWAT with the pestle. Some of you are stacking one on top of the other. That's not right. It should be intertwined or blended. And I guess if I'm trying to find a synonym. The other big thing, well, actually two more big things. Maybe no, three more actually big things. The other thing regarding the SWOT, just remember, right? Strengths and weaknesses are things that you can control, as in terms of an organization. And then opportunities and threats are things that you cannot control. They're exterior. So again, what's controllable, what's not controllable, right? Disney buying Fox is not an opportunity. Disney decided internally, hey, let's buy Fox. And so this is why, Iger and Murdoch met, before the merger took place. And again, if you remember what I said about the pestle and the SWAT, well, pestle, CEOs just don't meet, just because. They meet for a specific reason. It's political, right? And so they're essentially, I'm assuming, Iger was testing the waters to see, hey, if I decide to buy this person's content, would this person be amendable to it? So, and also when you're reading, especially Disney case study, um, you got to read through the whole article. Some of you with the objectives, again, it needs to be something tangible, didn't finish reading the whole thing because the objective really came really towards the end of the case study. Did the writer actually tell you, oh, this is the objective, this is what's going to determine success for Disney Plus? What other thing? So objective needs to be tangible. You can write the most beautiful paragraph in the history of words, but it's still wrong if you don't use a number of some sort. And it has to be the right number. What other thing? Competitive strategies. Again, it's not what your company's doing, it's what the competitors are doing. So all in all, actually, most of you did really well, which makes me very happy because I want to see all of you pass. But the ones that didn't do so well, that's the main things that you didn't do well. Some of you also, with the evaluation, especially for the Netflix and Amazon case study, it's asking you, who do you think is going to win? And some of you in your evaluation said everything but who's going to win. So, who do you think is going to emerge as the victor in terms of those two companies? And remember, this case study was written before Disney came onto the scene, and so I think it happened right before Disney became onto the scene. Anyways, any questions? So the case studies are more or less going to be like what you just did, except there's going to be four more. No questions? Okay, so let's get started. Today we're going to finish talking about trademarks. We're going to finish talking about patents. We're going to finish talking about licensing. We're going to jump into branding. So for trademarks, just bear in mind and remember that it took place post World War II under the Lanham Act, and essentially our U.S. government decided or came to the realization post World War II that logos, slogans, titles, those sorts of things were going to be immensely important moving forward. Thank God they had that kind of foresight back in 1947. And so essentially, right, the Lanham Act protects a slogan, right, or a phrase like the happiest place on earth, a name like Universal or Warner Brothers, a logo, which is the company's identity. If it has a symbol of some sort, an image, domain names even trademarked. So if you have a cool idea for a domain name, any of you out there, you should definitely trademark it. I mean, it's not that complicated when it comes to domain names, generally speaking. Though I had a friend who, before when the internet was just taken off, I thought he was kind of crazy, but it turned out that he was actually quite smart. He was buying up domain names, and he's made a lot of money off of the fact that he owns the rights to these domain names. And people would come along and say, "Hey, I want this domain name," and he goes, "I can't have it because he owns it." So he would sell domain names, and quite forward thinking. So, sort of like the people who started buying Bitcoin a long time ago. I think that's going to work out. Anyways, so it's renewed forever. It's renewed every 10 years. Now, that being said, right, yes, it's renewed every 10 years, but the first time that you renew a trademark, does anybody know when you're supposed to renew it? Between what year and what year? For the very first time, it's referred to as declaration of use. Does anybody know when you're supposed to trademark something the very first time you trademark? Well, after you register it and trademark it. So the first time you renew it, does anybody know between what year and what year? Anybody? Any guesses? Ooh, very good, Georgette. Yes. It's between the fifth and sixth year. Awesome. You renew it the very first time. The reason this happens, or the reason that the trademark office does this, is because, as you know, most businesses go out of business before even year 5, and so essentially, a trademark office wants to make sure that um, essentially the logo, the slogan, the name, whatever that's been trademarked is still being used. So it's really important, if any of you out there who are entrepreneurs, have a cool logo, design, whatever, that you trademark it, because it does limit how and who can use that trademark. You don't want somebody stealing your trademark, right? If possible. I mean, it can happen, but at least in the States, there's more protection, and even in other parts of the world. Um, so anyways, the initial trademark cost is between $225 and $400, which sounds like a lot, but if you really think about how valuable a trademark can be, it's really a drop in the bucket. I want to say that on top of this initial trademark cost, if you want to certify or trademark a name or logo or whatever, you can hire somebody at the trademark office to do research on your behalf. And they'll do some research in terms of like making sure that nobody else is using that logo, that name, whatever, because you do want to avoid trademark infringement if possible. All right, so let's discuss some trademark infringements. So likelihood for confusion confusion. This is something that actually, when I was working for an event company, actually a nonprofit that we did events, we actually got busted for likelihood for confusion, and we had to pay a pretty hefty fine um, to the person who actually owned the trademarks. This is before the age of the internet, and where you can really do some really good research. And we were too cheap to actually ask the trademark office to do research on our behalf, and we ended up getting fined. I don't remember how much we got fined, but it was a nice figure. It was at least $10,000. I want to say it was 25,000, but I honestly don't remember how much we got fined for um, likelihood for confusion. So, anyways, when does this apply? When when does likelihood for confusion apply? Does anybody know when this actually is applicable? Because it's not always applicable. The likelihood for confusion. No, Gabriella, but good guess. Anybody else? Very good, Georgette. Yes, it applies when it's in the same category, right? So the reason we got busted again for likelihood for confusion is because we created an award show. I think we called it the Bravo Awards. Yeah, Bravo Awards. And it just so happened, right, that there was already a Bravo Awards out in the marketplace. And they were also doing, I think we were doing, I think they were also doing like Latino Awards or something like that. And just so happened ours was doing the same thing. And so we created a likelihood for confusion. So we got fined, but they fined us or sued us, I should say, for trademark infringement. And we lost. I think I can't remember how much we paid. But anyways, what we should have done on our behalf in order to avoid what you should do to avoid is due diligence. So if we had been able to prove that we had done due diligence, in other words, we had done our research. We did research. We just didn't do good enough research. And so you have to prove in your defense is that you did due diligence. If you didn't do your due diligence, and you just were too lazy to do research, this is when you're going to get fined. So this is where it's really important for any of you out there who have your own little businesses or want to create a business, is that you do your research because you don't want to create a name um, in the same category where that company already exists, because you're going to get fined. And you don't want to be like Puente, who gets fined. I didn't pay for it, but still, I was part of the problem. It's fined $25,000. It's not a good thing. So number two, knockoff. So this is pretty simple. Essentially means that you're creating counterfeit goods. Most likely, this is going to apply to products, trademark products. The best example would be like this happens a lot in fashion, or happens a lot in sports with jerseys. So, for instance, in the world of fashion, right? If you ever go to the garment district in downtown Los Angeles, you might run across, gosh, I wish I knew female brands, but like a Louis Vuitton or something that's a famous brand. And, but you'll find it at this store and it's clearly, right, not that. So, you know, generally speaking, the way knockoffs work is that you have a licensee, right? A licensor who gives authority to a licensee to make those, let's say, jerseys or purses or whatever. And if they don't have that agreement, then essentially that company is creating a knockoff, right? When they put especially when they put the logo of the product onto that particular product or item, I should say. Does that make sense? The knockoff part. What about intellectual property in reference to knockoffs? Is it okay to sell if it has a slight difference, like everyone's? That's a good question. I my initial inclination would be no, Georgette, unless that particular company has given you the authority to sell their goods. That makes sense. And the idea of inspired merchandise, does inspired mean they're using that brand name? Because if they're using that brand, if they're attaching that logo onto their items, that's a knockoff. That's a no-no, even if it's inspired. Oh, if there's no actual logo, then you know that you're fine, generally speaking. Now you might get busted for this is something different than a trademark. This would be a patent. So you might get busted for, let's say, a design patent. That makes sense. But a design patent lasts for a shorter period of time. You know, the design of, let's say, well, usually a design, it's usually referred to like a toy or something like that. It might apply to fashion too, but I'm not 100% sure. So number three is tarnishes. Um, I know we talked about parody in terms of like it's okay to create parodies of copyrighted things, like with a song or whatever. But in trademarks, parodies don't always fly. And so let's just say you create a parody of I don't know, a Disney logo. You could actually get into trouble under dilution. Now, does anybody know? This only applies, by the way, to a certain type of trademark. Does anybody know a certain type of trademark that this applies to, dilution? Because it doesn't apply to every trademark. No, I mean, it could apply to a slogan, Bailey, and it could apply to a logo, Jack. So yes, that's true. It could apply, but it only applies to a certain type of slogan or logo or right. Megan, very good. It only applies to famous or popular trademarks. That's it, right? If Puente had a trademark, and let's just say somebody else decided to make a parody of my trademark, and nobody knows about my trademark, it doesn't apply. So as Megan points out, it only applies to famous or well-known trademarks, right? Otherwise, it doesn't apply. So it has to be famous or well-known, where essentially a company can sue another company for dilution, but it only applies to famous or well-known trademarks. It doesn't apply to most trademarks. So the threshold of approving, dilution is pretty high. So if somebody made I know there was a sort of famous case, relatively speaking, about Starbucks. Somebody made a parody of uh, the Starbucks logo, and I think Starbucks sued them. But anyways, that would apply if this is what they sued them for, because the Starbucks logo is well known, it's famous. So Starbucks in this case would have a really good case, and I think they won, if I'm not mistaken. So last but not least is illegal use of a celebrity's name or image. Remember that a celebrity's image or name falls under the realm of a trademark. And so you can't put a celebrity's image or name on a t-shirt or whatever unless they grant you permission to use their likeness. Does everybody get that? Like, for instance, right? I think it's EA. Electronic Arts made a lot of money, or has made a lot of money off the Madden football game and the video game. And so, but they couldn't use Madden's name until they actually met with John Madden, talked to him about this video game. I don't think Madden even knew what a video game was. And so essentially he said, sure, I'll put my name on the game. And so, but they couldn't put his name on the game unless he had granted permission to I think, Electronic Arts, so they can actually use the name. No, it's essentially a knockoff is when you create a product when you're not granted permission to be a licensee. Right, so you as a licensor, you hire a licensee, let's say a retailer who's, well, a company is going to make t-shirts on your behalf. And if you grant them the right to use your logo and place it on the shirt, and if that retailer or that company decides to make t-shirts, NFL t-shirts, they're not supposed to put your logo on there. Excellent. Okay. So this is an interesting case. I don't think this is going anywhere, but this is just interesting, just in terms of like what the theme park is saying about Taylor Swift and why they're suing her over trademark infringement.
Listen to this. A Utah company has now filed a lawsuit against pop star Taylor Swift, claiming that her latest album and merchandise violate the company's trademark. Fox 13's Aaron Cox talked with the company's founder and with an expert on what trademarks really mean.
There's an enchanting park in Pleasant Grove that started years before at Ken Brett Schneider's house.
Like 2013, in 2 nights, we had almost 11,000 people come through our house.
Brett Schneider says he wanted to turn a 2-night magical experience into a year-round theme park, and then to create digital experiences.
We spent the money in the domain, and then we started building the whole concept of the park.
But their construction plans soon went over budget, and Brett Schneider says they ran into financial trouble, couldn't finish building the park, but tried to open up anyway.
Try not to do the easy thing, which is to declare bankruptcy and walk away from it.
In 2020, the pandemic squandered any of their hopes. They even created a GoFundMe.
Felt like I was on an old cardigan.
Late in December, Taylor Swift released a new album under the name Evermore, and with it, merchandise under the same name Brett Schneider says they use for their company.
We are protecting our brands. We built brands not just for a park, but to build books.
Stephen Reinhart, a patent and trademark attorney in Salt Lake City, has been in the business for 14 years.
There's a common misconception out there that when you have a trademark, you have the exclusive right to use that trademark in all industries.
Reinhart says there were differences in uses between Taylor Swift's use of Evermore and Brett Schneider's that may play a key factor when a judge reviews the lawsuit.
While the complaint is heavy on facts, it's light on legal allegations. Evermore is a generic term. Does it describe the goods or services of Taylor Swift or of the amusement park?
Brett Schneider claims it does. Fox 13 did not hear back from Taylor Swift and her representatives. Brett Schneider hopes they will take their business seriously.
We're proud of what we built, and we put a lot of investment into it, and we don't want people to just take advantage of it.
Aaron Cox, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Well, and I guess the big question is, right, regarding this case, and as the attorney pointed out, is there a likelihood for confusion? Do the categories overlap? I agree, Georgia. I think legally speaking, they do have a good point in terms of like, yes, they had the name before Taylor Swift did, but exactly right. And so one's music, one's a theme park. And so are consumers going to be confused when they go, oh, Evermore, whatever the name was? Are they going to be confused with, let's say, Taylor Swift's merchandise? I mean, I don't think so. I personally don't think so. Maybe you're right. Yes, maybe. And so I think you're right. You should be an attorney, Georgette. So that's very good. Yeah, maybe, as Georgette pointed out, maybe the fact that they might be able to use this case actually to create even more. Oh, really? That's perfect. So they might want to create, more publicity by doing this lawsuit, although lawsuits are really expensive. So I'm not sure how far this is going to go. But I think Georgette's right. This doesn't create a likelihood for confusion. I don't think this is going to be very successful, but it is an interesting case. Just things to think about when it comes to names and logos, and how we see industries in many ways overlapping with others. So, any last questions regarding trademarks? No questions? So building, oops, let me go back. So building on this is one of the important parts of trademarks is you need logos or recognizable logos if you're going to create a licensing program. Licensing program essentially means, right, that you're going to license products. So you're going to hire a bunch of licensees to create products on your behalf, usually obviously based off an entertainment product in this case. So if you have, let's say, a valuable logo or name, like say like a Mickey Mouse, right, or Disney, you're going to spin off that logo or that name and create other products. And so you're going to hire licensees to create these products for you. So again, that's where it's really important to protect your marks. And so in this case, right, you're essentially, if you can create a very important or lucrative licensing program, you can really leverage the brand, and you can really increase the value of the brand if you have a very successful licensing program. For example, right, if you think about Harry Potter, or if you think about Marvel, or if you think about Star Wars, right, these are, they've created some very significant and very lucrative licensing programs, which have elevated the value of the brand immensely. And so I gave you some examples here of some toys or games or clothing or other accessories, right? Like something that you can hang around your neck, like a necklace, or you can carry like your keys around your neck. You can create books off of an entertainment product, a computer or some sort of platform game, dishes, etc. I mean, just think about all the different ways that you can create products off of a logo or a trademark. So the big thing here is, right, is whoever you usually call the consumer products group. So the licensor would be like a Disney or a Universal or a Warner Brothers or, somebody like that. And essentially what a licensor needs to do essentially is that they need to secure deals with the licensee. So again, it needs to secure deals with the licensee. Going back to my idea or my comment about knockoffs, right? One of the reasons one of the biggest reasons why it's a knockoff is because the licensor did not hire that licensee to, let's say, make T-shirts with permission to use their marks. And so the licensor, right, has to make sure they're actually hiring good licensees, somebody who's going to make quality T-shirts, quality video games, quality toys. If they're going to spin off a book, they're going to publish a quality book, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the licensor needs to make sure that happens. And the licensee, on the other hand, needs to make sure that they have proper well, number one, make a good product, of course, but they also need to make sure that they have a good relationship with the retailer. And so, for instance, and this is not sort of passe now, but the idea of securing shelf space at a Walmart or a Target, people still go to Walmart or Targets. And so the licensees need to make sure that they're going to launch something into, let's say, a Target or a Walmart or something like that, that Walmart or Target is going to provide them with a significant amount of shelf space or necessary shelf space. Also, the licensee, in the case going, if they're working with Walmart or Target, they got to make sure that Walmart or Target or whoever is going to support this campaign. In other words, are they going to work with the licensee? So are they going to create lots of shelf space? Are they going to let the licensee put up, big displays, letting people know, hey, here's our product, you can go buy it. So that's really important, right? And of course, it's going to depend on whether or not it's new or old. Usually, a Walmart or a Target is going to work well with a licensee that they know is has significant pull. Anything that has to do with Disney, for instance, Walmart or Target's going to put a big special section for those types of apparel because they know that sort of apparel is going to sell. And new apparel or new type of licenses or marks, retailers may not support as enthusiastically, unfortunately, even though the quality might be better than the old brand, right, or the old marks. Because it's new, there's going to be an extra struggle that it's not proven. So, retailers is more hesitant to provide all this shelf space for a bunch of toys where they don't really know if people are going to be attracted to those toys because it has, that mark on it. Does that make sense? Any questions on the licensing program? So this lady she's really good about talking about the licensing for movies.
Whenever you see a new film at the theatres or the cinemas, you expect to see a lot of brand engagement around that launch. Well, one person that knows all about it is Jamie Stevens, the head of consumer brands at Sony Pictures. Jamie, how important is licensing when it comes to launching in theatres?
Licensing plays a huge part in our business. It really extends the brand and the message to get people into the seats in the theaters, and it really lets them experience the brand like they've never been to be able to experience before. So they're able to get t-shirts and toys and other things that are part of the film and the experience that they can take home with them.
There are some obvious, easy films that you can talk about where there is a lot of branding around it, but it's not just those ones.
It isn't. And what we do at Sony is we try to take almost every film and look at the right application and see if we can make products and experiences for our fans. So we have things from Ghostbusters to our television shows, and all have consumer products and products that go with it.
It's all about the IP, obviously, and something I can spot behind is Men in Black returning in June 2019. What sort of things will you be doing to start promoting that even this far out?
Well, we will start having a trailer that will come out this holiday, and then we're starting pitching to all of our partners, and we'll have a lot of different categories that really bring the franchise to life and are reinvigorating a new story for a new generation.
Sometimes you see films going in and out of the theatre really, really quickly, maybe 3-4 weeks at best. How important is this sort of licensing to keep the brand in the customer's eye for as long as possible?
The licensing is really important, and also we're not just about the film window. We have the DVD window, we have digital, so it's important to keep that brand out as long as we possibly can, and hopefully for the next iteration of the film or television.
And what sort of novel things are you starting to do? Once upon a time it might be an offer on the side of a breakfast cereal packet or something like that, but where is the novelty now?
We're really looking in all the products we do to put innovation, and it's all about that brand. So anything we can do that really ties back to what the brand essence is about, we try to do that.
It's more than just toys then.
It's more than just toys. It's about experiences, it's interactive gaming, it's VR. It's really bringing that product to life for the consumer.
So tell us about some of the big films that you're pushing here at the show today.
So we're really excited. We have some new films and television shows, and we also have some older films and franchises. So for example, Ghostbusters is celebrating its 35th anniversary, and we have a lot of things going on for that. And then we're also looking at a new Men in Black, a new Charlie's Angels, and we have great TV shows like Outlander that we are promoting and developing products for.
So that's a really good example. We're going to talk about experiential marketing shortly, but the idea of an experience is now immensely important, especially it seems like for the newer consumer. It's not just about going to the movies, it's about the experience. The experience now is immensely important. And again, this is where licensing plays a critical role in trying to enhance the experience of consumers. So timing, this takes a long time, the whole idea of licensing. So usually a studio or a network, whatever, is going to start 2 years before the movie even debuts to start generating or creating a licensing program around that entertainment product. Again, 2 years before it's even going to be released, because it takes 2 years to actually, launch, let's say, toys, for instance. And so the reason it takes 2 years is because it's product development. It takes a lot of research and development and ideas in terms of how you want your products to look, how you want your products essentially to move if it's toys again. And so it takes a lot of time to secure a licensee, but then having that licensee make the products for you, it takes a long time. So again, 2 years. The other thing that licensees or licensing program is responsible for, the licensor, is a style guide, right? It includes the logos and typefaces. So they got to approve all the artwork. So how is it going to look, right, on the shelf? And so essentially Nintendo, I'm not sure who makes these LOL toys, which I see all the time. But, essentially each of these licensors has a style guide in terms of like, how do they want their products to appear on the shelves? And in terms of the logos, in terms of like the design. And so the style guide is developed by the licensor, right, to make sure that it's being used appropriately. The licensor has to approve all the products as it moves down the production line. So they have to QC everything, quality control. And so they also have to go through all the trademark approvals and copyright approvals and all sorts of things. So the licensor does a lot of work, working very closely with the licensee, making sure that both parties at the end of the day, when it hits the shelves, both parties are happy. So again, this is why it takes 2 years. So a licensed product, basically I'm referring to the fact that a product would be like a video game, right? This would be an example of a product. These are products, right? The console and this toy, which I believe you put it in water where it dissolves, if I remember correctly. Those are examples of products, right? A t-shirt's a product. A property would be the actual, like the name. So Mickey Mouse or Walt Disney or Harry Potter, those are licensed properties. And then of course, you're going to make products off of those properties. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions regarding licensing so far? So licensed rights. So generally speaking, the licensor, and this is a lot of work, grants exclusive or non-exclusive rights. So it really depends on the product category, right? So if you're gonna make a video game off of your movie, let's say, or a television program, okay, it makes sense then to have an exclusive deal with some sort of video game developer, right? That makes sense. But let's just say hypothetically you're gonna make, again, T-shirts, right, with a bunch of Mickey Mouse on it. It doesn't make sense then to make it exclusive. In that case, right, it probably would behoove you to be non-exclusives because you want a lot of those T-shirts out in the marketplace. As long as, in the case of Mickey Mouse, you might say, okay, you have the rights to, North America territory. You might have the rights to Europe, or certain countries in Europe. So license rights, right, could be exclusive, non-exclusive. Typically there's a duration in terms of time. How much are you giving that licensee the rights to use your marks? And then in what territories are they allowed to use your marks? Any questions regarding licensed rights? So I already made the point. Let's see. So at times, minimum guarantees. So oftentimes the licensor is going to ask for a minimum guarantee from the licensee. And the licensee, right, essentially, let's say, licensor says, okay, if you want the rights to make our video game, we want a minimum guarantee of $50,000. And so the licensee is able to meet that guarantee, then the licensor may ask for a royalty. So let's just say they might say, okay, we want a royalty of 25% for every video game you sell, for instance. And the royalties again are paid on a wholesale price, not the retail price. So the licensor also sometimes, especially the big studios, will charge you sometimes a distribution fee if you're going to hire them to distribute your content. So that means either managing or selling multiple products, right? Whether it's T-shirts, toys, whatever. Multiple timelines, because they're not all shipping out at the same time. And again, they have to quality control everything. So if you're going to work with the studio and you want the studio to ship your stuff for you, understand and know that the studio is going to charge you a distribution fee for shipping out your material. Hopefully that makes sense. Nowadays, of course, with the days of Amazon, it's not as necessarily as essential. So any questions regarding licenses as we move on to patents? So really there's two types of patents that are important to the entertainment industry. At least in the United States, the way it works is that you apply for a patent here in the US and it protects you here in the United States. Unfortunately, unlike trademarks and copyrights, a patent, you actually have to apply for the rights to for that patent in each territory, which can get kind of tricky and kind of expensive. This is why you hire, a patent attorney. Maybe Georgette in the future might be a patent attorney. So the way to distinguish a design patent versus a utility patent is that the design patent essentially is how does it look? What does the product look like? So if you have a new product design, right, that would be an example of a design patent. Now, a design patent only lasts 15 years. Does everybody get that? 15 years for a design patent. Now, a utility patent is a little bit different than a design patent, and that is how it's used. So I gave you the example of Harry Connick Jr. I don't know if you've I've heard of him. He's a very good singer. He had his own talk show at one point in time, I think. And so he created something called a system method for coordinating music displays among players in an orchestra. So, as my son keeps crying. So, basically what this is, is that people were having issues with the sheet music when there would be, let's say, orchestras outdoors with wind. And and it'd be blowing the pages everywhere. So the utility patent, essentially what it does, in this case, Harry Connick Jr., it essentially keeps everybody's sheet music from flying away, and it keeps it stable, so everybody's on the same page. And I can't believe that's what didn't exist prior to this. But anyways, Harry Connick came up with this idea, patented it, and now he has it for 20 years. So again, design patent 15 years, utility patent 20 years. Does everybody get that? So for example, Disney spends, they're constantly innovating. By the way, most entertainment companies are constantly innovating when it comes to patents. The reason being, again, design patent only lasts 15 years versus the utility patent only lasts 20 years. So it doesn't last forever, right? It's not like a trademark. And so this is the reason why innovation keeps happening, especially in things like movies and especially in things like in theme parks.
Hey everyone, when would you want a second teaser trailer? Collectibles. As most of us know, Star Wars Land is well near completion and I couldn't be more excited about it. I was actually walking around there, well, not there, but behind the gates that were closed just a few weeks ago. In preparation for this, which I can only assume is meant to be released with the park's grand opening as a kind of deal thing going on, Disney has begun patenting the first and most realistic lightsaber on Earth. At least so far. Before we get ahead of ourselves here, no, it can't burn through things, which would be really cool, but also extremely terrifying. I mean, just imagine all the casualties. Anyways, a few designs have been posted on Walt Disney World News today. Their report reads, "The new technology exemplified in this patent application is used to build a lightsaber hilt that works like a motorized tape measure. At the press of a button, the tape will extend to a total length several times that of the hilt itself. The tapes will also have some kind of LED lighting inside, such that the lightsaber can light up similar to the way they appear in the films." So essentially, the blade is within the hilt, and most likely similar to the blade that we get in the collectible Force Effects lightsabers, although of course don't quote me on that, but I can't really see them using anything else. Only this time, the only difference is that it actually extends and retracts with the click of a button. Now, my concern here is if we get the actual seams or not, like in the old plastic ones, which would extend. Those kind of just ruined it for me, but of course that's more of a cheap version, and this is going to be probably a lot more expensive, so I'm hoping that they fix the seams and make it seamless. I imagine these will be collectibles and probably far more expensive than, the Force Effects lightsabers or any of the other lightsabers that we've gotten in the past, since it'll essentially be a hilt with the click of a button emitting a lightsaber blade. For those who remember when I used to do lightsaber giveaways, each one costs a minimum of about $175 American, or roughly 200 Canadian. So while there's no price on these yet, I can imagine they're much higher quality than those, so they'd probably be maybe double the price. I don't even know, but I doubt they'll be made cheap.
So my question to you is, in this particular case, would Disney be applying for a design patent, a utility patent, or both? Yes, it's both. Exactly right. Because the design, the look is going to be different, and apparently the way it's used is also going to be different. Now, again, the one caveat to this again is that the design itself only lasts 15 years versus the utility, which is 20 years. So there's different links depending on the type of patent that you secure. Any questions before we move on?
Hey everyone, when
To branding. No, you cannot, Gabriella. You lose them. That's a good question. So if you have a design patent, it lasts 15 years and that's it. You lose it. With the utility patent, you only get 20 years and that's it. This is why Disney, Universal, especially those theme park companies and companies that make roller coasters and things like that are constantly trying to innovate because patents don't last forever. And so I think in some ways it's good because it helps innovation, but in some ways it's bad because you come your idea only lasts for a good idea only lasts for 15 years, but the design patent versus if it's a utility patent 20 years. You can also, by the way, if you want, if somebody's, I don't know if anybody here is creative, but if you're super creative, you could also, you can sell your patent to a company, right? And so, and get a royalty. Right, exactly, Bailey. Yes, once the patent's up, anybody can use it then. It's public domain. Anybody can use your products. So I guess the only downside is, of course, is that, that design's already 15 years old, right? Or if it's a utility patent, it's already going to be 20 years old. So yes, it goes into public domain, but it might be, a passe. All right, so I'm not going to spend a lot. Well, it's already, what time is it? What time? Ooh, it's 12:30. All right, so for branding and positioning, we'll talk mostly about branding. So these are 3 levels of a product. I think this is a really good example that Kotler makes here, just in terms of like when it comes to brands. So you got to think of the core benefit, right? When it comes to a brand, is essentially what's in it for us, right? It's the main benefit to the user. So if you go to, let's say, Six Flags Magic Mountain, right? You go to Six Flags. What's in it for me? Well, it's a thrill ride. It's excitement. If you go to Disneyland, right, might be like it's family friendly. It's the happiest place on earth. It makes me feel good, something like that. So what's the main benefit, right? What's in it for me is the core benefit. So whether it's a theme park or a sporting event that's going to have, let's say, excitement, maybe it's a museum, learning or educational would be the core benefit. So again, think about, the quality level, the brand name, how is it packaged, all that falls into the core benefit. So the core benefit, right, would be the main benefit right here in the center. Is the main benefit to the audience, again, excitement, atmosphere, theme park, excitement, museum, learning. So again, think about the quality level, a Disney, a Universal. Think about how they spend so much time in making sure that the products is immaculate. The brand name, of course, the packaging, which again goes back to cleanliness. I want to say Disney hires people just to clean up the park to make sure there's no trash laying on the ground. So again, what's in it for the audience? It is the core benefit. The actual product, right, is here, right? And so the actual product would be the features, the rides, the brand name, the quality level, the styling, the packaging is all up here. The actual product, core product is what's in it for them. And then the augmented product is usually the outside. The augmented product is all the other additional things that make this a cool place. So besides what's in it for for the audience, so what sets the product apart from its competitors? So for instance, right, there's lots of beautiful places in the world. If you ever traveled, I mean, you can go to Mexico, Canada. I mean, there's so many places throughout the world that, it's just beautiful just in terms of tourism. But the one thing that sets the United States apart, right, from all the other countries is this idea of customer service. We are the best at customer service. This is, again, this is out here, the augmented product. We are the best at provided this augmented product. I've been to lots of places in the world, and the customer service is never quite as good as it is here. I've had, like, for instance, my clothes ruined in Ecuador, for instance. They didn't apologize. They're like, oh, we just put a bunch of bleach. Sorry about that. I don't even think they said sorry. But the point being is, in the United States, at least, if that had happened, they probably would have given me, like, probably some sort of check, or not, a check, or let me stay at their hotel for free, or giving me something to make up for the fact that they ruined my clothes. In Ecuador, I don't think I got anything. I don't even think they apologize, honestly. So does everybody understand these three levels of a product? There is the actual product, which is up on top, the core benefit, what's in it for me, and then the augmented product, what sets the product apart from its competitors. So what is the definition of a brand? Really, it's just a name or term, a design, a combination of all these things, intended to identify goods, service of one seller or a group of sellers, and to differentiate them from those competitors. So again, it's a name, it's a term, it's a symbol, a design, or a combination of all those intended to identify a product, a service of one seller or a group of sellers, and to differentiate them from other competitors. And so at the end of the day, right, the whole importance of the brand is that you want the same target audience to buy your products repeatedly, right? Goes back to what I was saying about being an advocate in previous lectures, is that you want that same target audience to buy your products over and over and over and over again. So again, this is Disney again. I talk about Disney a lot, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Disney, but I got to give them props. They are so good at getting their target audience, which is families, to buy their products over and over and over and over again. And that's what makes Disney so successful, is that they're able to attract this target audience successfully over the history of their company. So branding is really, right, the product's identity, but also its legacy. We'll touch upon this. Really, I'm referring to legacy in terms of equity. And so again, it's its product's identity and its legacy. So a strong brand, right, gives a product a personality. So do you want to be friends with this particular product or brand? So what is that personality? Is it cool? Is it educated? Is it old? Is it out of style? So what is the personality of the actual brand? Gives a product it also gives it an image. It's also a single voice for the brand. And so strong branding enables it to stand out from its competitors. So one of the big ways that you build legacy, and again, I'm referring to equity here, is this idea of reliability. So can you trust the product? Do you know every time you go to Disney, is it going to be a good experience? And for most of us, even when I hardly go to Disneyland, but even though when I do go, I go, oh, this is pretty cool, even though the lines kind of suck sometimes. But I know, generally speaking, that if I want to provide a good experience for my family, then the go-to, even though it's really expensive, is Disneyland. So I know I can rely on them. I trust them. They've built up a lot of goodwill with me, even though, again, I'm not the biggest fan in the world. So the disadvantage, generally speaking, the disadvantage when it comes to branding is this doesn't necessarily apply to, let's say, like the Lakers. It doesn't necessarily apply to the Dodgers. It doesn't apply necessarily to Disney per se. But in order to create, in many cases, a strong brand, you need to spend a lot of money reminding people that this is a cool brand through advertising. And again, there's some exceptions to this rule. So I know Disney does some advertising, but not a tremendous amount. Disney kind of sells itself with word of mouth. The same thing with the Dodgers, right? The Dodgers, if they had decided, well, if we're allowed to bring fans again to the stadiums, the Dodgers are was going to draw well. They have a huge fan base, especially after this year where they won the World Series. The Lakers, right? They don't really need to advertise. They have a strong legacy. Again, especially since they've won the championship last year. But in most cases, right, if you don't have a strong legacy or equity, then you need to remind people, hey, we exist, unless you have, again, a super strong brand. Another challenge is the standardized experience. So this is something that actually Disney had to deal with for a while. Disney's actually got a lot better about this. So one of the biggest issues they had when they expanded, let's say, to Paris, to France, was that they tried to bring American culture to France, and it didn't work out so well. So now Disney has sort of like customized its Disney experience depending on the country that it's in. So it wants to incorporate some of their some of the host country's culture. So it's not just just U.S. Disney. It's sort of catered to the local culture as well. It's Disney, but also there's some local culture blended in as well. Questions about brand and branding? So think about these particular brands as we get into brand equity. So we've already discussed and know that Disney has a lot of, brand equity or strength. Now, do these other three brands have a strong equity? Would you consider them to be strong brands? Is the National Football League, even if you're not a fan, do you consider to have a strong brand? Or Netflix, even though you may have switched from Netflix to Disney Plus, do you think it still has a strong brand? League of Legends, do you think it has a strong brand? Yeah, I would agree. Again, right? Part of the strength of a brand, yes, all of you guys are correct. Even if you're not a fan, right, of, let's say, the National Football League, you might think football is annoying because your husband, wife, whatever, boyfriend, girlfriend watches way too many hours of football, but you're aware of it. So part of having a strong brand or having a lot of equity is not just being a fan of the brand. It's also this idea of like, oh, I know it exists, right? Even if you're not a fan, the fact that you have brand awareness makes it a strong brand, even again, if you're not per se a fan. All right, so let's see, how much time do I have left? Okay. So brand equity. So what exactly is brand equity? So brand equity essentially means, right, that you have a company or a product's reputation It's reputation in the marketplace. It's a company or brand's reputation in the marketplace. So how much, essentially goodwill has your brand built up over the years, right? So going back to my example, right? Netflix has been in the marketplace for quite a long time now. They have a lot of equity, right? They have a strong reputation. Obviously, Disney, a very strong reputation. You think about League of Legends has become a relatively strong brand, especially amongst people who play video games. What was the last one? And the NFL. The NFL certainly has a strong brand. I mean, the NFL has been in business for over 100 years now. And so certainly that company or brand's reputation in the marketplace, what is it? And so the three important parts to help brand equity, number one, is are consumers familiar with the brand? That's brand awareness. So number one, brand awareness, right? That's number one. So consumers are familiar with the brand. Brand awareness is number one. Number two, know from experience that it brings positive results or heard of its positive results. Brand image. That's again, brand image. So brand image again is know from experience because you've gone to a football game or you've gone to Disneyland or you've subscribed to Netflix or heard of its positive results. So brand image. So again, you may not be a fan of the National Football League. You might think, football sucks, but you've heard from people, oh, going to the game was so cool. That is a brand image. Number three is unique brand association. So it's either the perception of its characteristics or perception of its qualities. So perception, again, of its characteristics or of its qualities. So what do you think of when you think of that particular brand, right? What do you associate with the brand? Again, number one, brand is brand awareness. Number two, brand image. Number three is a unique brand association. Those three parts help build a strong or help build a lot of equity with your brand. So there's two types of brand knowledge, right? There's brand awareness. Are you familiar? And then brand image, your impression real or not. So for instance, again, going back to the idea of the Dodgers, right? You may not be a Dodger fan. Maybe you love the Angels and you think the Angels you hate the Dodgers with the intensity of 1,000 suns. But, you're still familiar with the fact that in this town or in this part of California, right? Over, in the other county, right? There's this team called the Dodgers. You're familiar with them. And, like it or not, your impression, again, you might think you hate them with the intensity of 1,000 suns, but if you really think about it, you're like, well, they've won some World Series, so can't deny that. So any questions regarding the idea of the two types of knowledge? The last thing I'm going to touch upon today, and we'll go back, and actually I probably can touch on both of these, is brand equity. So the idea of using logos, licensing programs, attractive package designs, merchandising materials, all those sorts of things, right, plays a critical role in building equity, right? So let's say if you have a terrible experience when you go to Dodger Stadium, maybe you're a Giants fan or an Angels fan or whatever, one of the things that could hurt you, even if you're a Dodger fan, is maybe you have a very poor experience at Dodger Stadium. But because you happen to be a fan of the Dodgers over the years, they have so much equity that you kind of, you give them a pass. So that's one of the great things about brand equity is that if you have a bad experience, you give them a pass. So Disneyland or Disney has a lot of equity. So even if you have a terrible experience, let's say somebody spills soda on you or something when you go to Disneyland, or something happens that, is not so cool at Disneyland. Because Disneyland has so much equity in it, you give them a pass. So that's the importance of equity. But also, again, equity can be enhanced through logos, design packages, attractive merchandising, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the one bad thing, and this is the last thing I want to talk about today, is sometimes the brand becomes so overwhelming and so powerful that it becomes essentially the entire product category. So, for instance, the idea of Coke, right? You might have bought a knockoff or just another version of a Coke that isn't really Coke, but if you have a bad experience with that Coke, you blame Coke for it, even though it's not a Coke. I use the example of Kleenex here. You really, it's tissue, right? It's not, Kleenex is a brand name, but the fact that Kleenex is such a powerful name, people now ask for it. Can you give me a Kleenex? Can you pass me a Kleenex? Do you have any Kleenex? And so if that product provides, doesn't, do a good job, let's say it crumbles up before you're able to, to clean up whatever mess you had, you blame it on Kleenex. So that's the unintended consequences, is that if you have a poor experience with that particular product, it may not actually be the actual brand that you're blaming. It should be the brand that you're actually using, if that makes any sense. All right, so it's 12:47. Okay, so hope everybody has a good weekend. Hopefully you're reaching out to your group mates in terms of ideas. So if you have any questions regarding the case, not the group work, not the individual case study per se, although you can certainly ask me questions about that. If you have any questions about the group project, please let me know if you're on the right track when it comes to ideas. Okay, so have a good day. Take care.